All right, Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My name is Matt Murphy. This is the Matt Murphy Radio Show. What's going on? How are y'all? Hour number 2 starts right now, this Thursday edition. It is episode 924, and I told you it would be just a gang of guests coming in. And I almost double booked, but I salvaged the double book because we've got Congressman John Rose coming up at 5:35 today to talk about his displeasure with the 8 Republican senators who, in his opinion, snuck in a piece of legislation into this provision that was tucked into an appropriations bill that was passed as a part of the legislative package to end the government shutdown that would allow senators to seek monetary damages if federal law enforcement obtained their data without meeting strict notification requirements. In other words, it involves 2 of our senators, and I think that Congressman John Rose is going to have his attention mostly on one of the 2. That would be Senator Marsha Blackburn, who's running for governor. Obviously, John's running for governor as well. But beyond that, we'll have a good conversation about that, about the reopening of government, et cetera. That's coming up at 5:35. Now, never you fear, Jackson. I know you're thinking to yourself, but Murphy, that's where nincompoops in the news normally goes. Jackson, I'm going to make it your call. We can do nincompoops at like 10 after 5. We can do nincompoops at 6:05. I think 6:05 is an appropriate time to do
6:05.
6:05 it is. So we've got Representative Scott Cepicky. He's going to be joining us in a moment. He has gone to get our next guest. Scott facilitated this next guest, and we're pleased to have him coming into the studio with us. And so that's coming up in just a couple of minutes, where we will welcome to the program the Consulate General for the Southeast region of the United States of America for the State of Israel. His name is Aten Weiss, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, but he'll be along with us. There's a certain security apparatus that has to be involved when you're talking about the Consulate General, and so they're working all of that out right now. So hopefully that will be happening very soon. He's in town to meet with a number of different folks in the state of Tennessee. It's my understanding there's a budding economic partnership, not just with the United States of America, but with the state of Tennessee and the state of Israel. And we'll talk about that, amongst other things, as we get that conversation going on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. I mentioned this story that is brewing, especially in our state, because of the 8 senators that were involved. 2 of them are from the state of Tennessee. But these Republican senators whose phone records were obtained, I don't know that any of us aren't concerned about how all of this went down during the Biden administration. We most certainly are. Where phone records were obtained as a part of Jack Smith's 2020 election probe, and Jack Smith enabled and empowered the Department of Justice to illegally obtain phone records. And I'll say illegally because I don't see the legal justification for any of this. These phone records of 8 separate senators. The provision that was tucked away in an appropriations bill, I won't say snuck in. Maybe Congressman John Rose would. I won't say it. It was tucked in, certainly, into an appropriations bill that passed as a part of the package. Allows senators to seek monetary damages if the federal law enforcement obtain their data without meeting strict notification requirements, according to the records that I'm reading from. So the new law came in response to a release of the FBI document, an FBI document this past October, which was dubbed Arctic Frost, and it's an operation that we've talked about in the past on our show that has been discussed quite a bit on Nashville's Morning News, Chris Hand, Chad Benson, etc. The FBI document in October showed that investigators obtained records in 2023 about telephone calls regarding 8 senators and 1 House member who made said calls in the days surrounding the January 6th, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. The revelation, rightly so, angered many Republicans who said the Justice Department under the Biden administration weaponized and was targeting GOP lawmakers for political purposes. According to the FBI document, the agency, quote, collected limited toll records. Toll records include information like which numbers participated in a call, how long said call lasted, does not contain the actual contents of the conversation. In an October 21st letter to lawmakers, attorneys for Smith defended his actions as, quote, lawful, proper, and consistent with established Department of Justice policy. His lawyers also previously said he would like to testify publicly about the investigation. The provision in the shutdown deal required service providers to notify Senate offices and the sergeant at arms if federal law enforcement requests data from lawmakers' offices, which seems reasonable, kind of a check and a balance against the Justice Department or the executive branch and the legislative branch. However, there are some exceptions if the senators are targets of criminal investigation. That's also reasonable. This is the provision that confused a lot of people, including me. Senators can pursue damages of $500,000 if law enforcement seeks an order blocking notification or if the data is obtained without notice. And it's retroactive to 2022. Proponents of the legislation argue the steep penalty is necessary to deter future abuse by the executive branch. But the prospect of senators reaping a windfall under legislative language they inserted at a last minute has angered many, including our own Congressman John Rose. So we'll be talking with him about that coming up at 5:35 this afternoon and get his thoughts on what, if anything, can be done about it. There are efforts. I think John is leading a part of that effort, and it has gotten the attention of House Speaker Mike Johnson, who said the lower chamber would agree to fast-track a bill to repeal the lawsuit provision, calling it, quote, way out of line. Also on this line, GOP Representative Greg Steube of Florida cited the law as a reason for voting against the funding mechanism, saying it was self-indulgent legal provisions for certain senators to enrich themselves. The 8 senators in question, and once again, I want to separate the two things. I don't think there's any question that these senators perhaps were victims of a fishing expedition on the part of the Biden administration. Okay, that's one thing. But the answer to that fishing expedition should be to go after the people engaging in the fishing expedition, not to monetarily compensate the senators who, to my knowledge, are not out monetarily in any way. This is punitive money. 4460 says they should each get a Hunter Biden painting instead of $500,000. Well, that would be about equivalent, considering what I saw some of the Hunter Biden paintings going for during Joe Biden's administration. I joke. I kid. The 8 senators are Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, Bill Hagerty of Tennessee, Josh Hawley of Missouri, Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, Cynthia Loomis of Wyoming, Dan Sullivan of Alaska, and Tommy Tuberville of Alabama. 5 of them, Hagerty, Blackburn, Johnson, Hawley, and Sullivan, have all said today that they have no plans to pursue the compensation. For his part, we invited Senator Bill Hagerty to be on the program. I was told that Bill Hagerty had no time this week. I was told that it was either Monday or Tuesday. I think it was Monday. Monday, I invited, we spoke to Senator Blackburn last week. Have not spoken to Senator Hagerty in some time. Invited Senator Hagerty on, considering that we expected that the government shutdown would be ending, expecting that they would have a chance to vote on these things. Invited him on, and I was told by one of the members of his staff in his press pool or whatever that he was booked up this week. That's fine. We understand. My response was, I would hope, considering the timing of all of this, that the senator would have availability to speak directly to his constituents in Middle Tennessee, as opposed to the people of Middle Tennessee hearing from the senator in an indirect fashion on Fox News Channel or Fox Business Channel or whatever national network we'll see Senator Hagerty on. I'm not knocking Senator Hagerty going on those networks. I appreciate the fact that he well represents the state of Tennessee on those many various platforms. I would just hope that he would default to speaking locally to the people before nationally, but that is his choice. One way or the other, we understand that the timing of these things are everything, and Senator Hagerty said that he would not be able to be on this week. I understand that. That said, my question for either Senator Hagerty or Senator Blackburn or Johnson or Hawley or Sullivan, who have all said, well, they have no plans to pursue the compensation, then why did you put it in the bill? Why is the compensation a part of the package? For her part, Senator Blackburn said in a statement to CBS News that she would, quote, support an effort to reverse the language in the bill if it comes up before the Senate. This fight is not about money. It's about holding the left accountable for the worst weaponization of government in our nation's history. If leftist politicians can go after President Trump and sitting members of Congress, they'll not hesitate to go after American citizens. All of that's true, and all of that's well and good, but why was it put there in the first place? It's a question we'll ask Congressman Rose, see if he knows the answer, and obviously, when we have an opportunity to speak to Senator Blackburn or to Senator Haggerty, we'll ask that question as well. All right, quick time out. We'll take a break. We'll be back, and we'll be joined by the Consulate General from Israel for the Southeast region of the United States of America and Representative Scott Cepicky. That's on the way next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We got to have a pretty boy in the studio, don't we?
Two of us.
Well, you two?
Yeah.
I'm not included in that.
No.
24 after the hour, the Matt Murphy Show continues. Super Talk 99.7 WTN. As forecast by us, we are joined. It's our pleasure to be joined by the Consulate General from the State of Israel in the Southeast region. He is Eitan Weiss.
That is correct.
I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly,
you're
Consulate
amazing.
General.
You're amazing. Thank you.
Thank you for spending some time with us this afternoon. It's a pleasure having you in.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me today with my good friend Cepicky here. It's going to be fun.
Representative Scott Cepicky facilitated our visit together. Thank you, Scott, for doing that.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Have you ever been to Nashville?
Actually, no, this is my first time, and I'm really, really excited to be here. It's an
How's it-
amazing state.
Have they taken you to Lower Broadway yet? I'm sure you're getting that question a lot, right?
I knew my team was hiding something from me, but hopefully we'll fix that this evening.
So, Biggie, you got to get him down to Lower Broad. Take him to Robert's Western
I will
World.
not be responsible for that.
Tell us, I mean, for those who don't know, and I admit that I'm probably within this number, what the role of a consulate general is.
So basically, a consul general is the highest representative of a government, of a country, to a host country. Basically, I represent the state of Israel and the people of Israel to the southeast, and my job is making sure that the relationships between our peoples will be stronger, and also on the economic sphere, bringing businesses, Israeli businesses here, businesses from the southeast into Israel, and basically making everyone more, I would say, happy when it comes to Israel.
And strengthening the relationship between the two great nations.
And that too, yeah, of course.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's been a lot of, the conversations involving our two nations over the last several years, sadly, have revolved around October 7th. And I'd be remiss if I didn't start there and talk to you about October 7th, the nature of the horrific attack against your country, and how that kind of changed your role in the United States and how, if anything, it strengthened the relationship between the United States of America and Israel.
Well, first of all, I think October 7th, the calamity that took place in Israel against the innocent Israelis, showcased to the world that Israel's right to exist among the nation is not yet secure. And in this important point of time comes the importance of the relationship with the great America, with the great United States, because without the support of the United States, not just since October 7th, but since Israel was established as a country, we wouldn't be here to tell our story. And it's extremely important to remind everyone that Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. We're the bastion of democracy in the Middle East. And it's extremely important for the interests of not just the United States, but the entire Western world to keep the fundamentalist and extremist beliefs that we see in the Middle East from coming into this part of the world. And we're the bastion, making sure that, the democratic values that we share and appreciate and the freedoms will be stronger than ever in the region.
Have you noticed since October 7th? Because in the aftermath of the horrible attacks, I felt like there was a groundswell of support and love for the Jewish people and for the state of Israel. And now I've noticed in my world and what I do on a regular basis, which is talk about these very important issues, there's been an underlying pushback of, I won't even address the anti-Semitism, but even almost a belief that we should separate geopolitically from the state of Israel. I don't pretend that it's a majority in the state of Tennessee. I don't believe it is. I don't think it's a majority in the United States of America, but I'm surprised at the amount of people that have voiced that determination. Have you experienced that? And what's your response to the importance of the relationship?
It's important to know two simple facts. The first thing is that sadly Israel is getting bad coverage through the, I would say, international media outlets. Why they're doing it, I don't know, whether it's anti-Semitism, whether it's because of whatever cheap capabilities of doing their jobs as reporters. But we just saw a couple of days ago, the head of BBC resigned because of research showing that the coverage of the BBC, again, the BBC, on the war with Gaza was terrible. They were promoting Hamas, a terrorist organization that killed Israelis, Americans, and others, even Palestinians. They killed their own. They promoted their agenda using the BBC's capabilities, and they basically, helped the Hamas delegitimize Israel in front of media audiences around the world. Not just them, also the New York Times and other media outlets over there. They're not doing their job properly, and they're basically giving, a free pass to Hamas's lying propaganda against Israel. That's terrible. Now, it's also important to note that the relationship between Israel and the U.S., it's not a one-way streak. Israel is definitely dependent on the United States' abilities and capabilities to help us, especially when it comes to the Foreign Military Act, basically giving us a big store credit. It's not that this administration or the U.S. government is giving us like a free check to do whatever we want with. No, they're giving us a store credit that we need to use only in the States. So because of the American aid, the U.S. aid to Israel, we're actually opening Israeli businesses here in the U.S. utilizing that, basically having more jobs for Americans, having more, taxes and whatnot. This money is being invested to the American people and the American economy. And Israel contributes by allowing our top companies to open shop here. And we share the amazing technologies that we develop with the United States. And we take a lot of pride in the fact that because of those technologies, we help save a lot of American lives on the field.
Consulate General Eitan Weiss is with us in studio today. We got a quick timeout for news, and we'll be back in a moment and continue the conversation after this. If you have any questions, 615-737-9986 on the Super Text line, and we'll relate some of those questions to the Consulate General. It is 4:30 on Super Talk. Studio today is Representative Scott Cepicky. If you're watching on Talk TV, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, or Rumble, he's the ugly guy. I had to get one in, right?
Wow.
Had to
So
get
much
one
love.
in.
So much love.
You're going to go there.
And we are joined. We have a very special guest in studio, Consul General to the Southeast for the State of Israel. Eitan Weiss is with us. We were talking off air, and I want to continue the conversation on air because I asked you the question. The mainstream media in the United States of America, they play on the sympathies of the average American who. I don't know that we have any concept of what the world is like in the Middle East and what life is like for the Israeli people. And you see the results of the necessity to push back against the attacks that Hamas committed on October 7th. I like to say that, people talk about ceasefire before we got one. It's like, well, there was a ceasefire on October 6th. Hamas violated said ceasefire. At the same time, Israel has obviously responded forcefully, and we see those images of devastation. And it plays on the sympathy of folks who perhaps don't understand the dynamic. Speak to that necessity, and what do you say to people who claim that Israel used their military in ways that led to civilian deaths?
So first of all, I think this is the most important point to stress because after October 7th, I was adjacent to my peers and colleagues from the IDF. I was assigned as a specific task force sitting with the IDF in the command and control center in the bunkers under the main military base in Tel Aviv, monitoring, supervising all military actions taking place in Gaza. And let me tell you something, that Israel and the IDF, we have the most moral military in the world. All the devastation that you see in Gaza, all the deaths that you see, you need to blame Hamas for everything. Why? Because that's what they do on purpose. They utilize and they misuse heavily civilian populated areas. They build their command and control centers in hospitals, underneath hospitals. They're building their ammunition depots in schools, in mosques, in order to attract the fire, in order to create those images. Sadly, our adversaries do not exist on the same plane of values as we do. They will lie, they will steal, they will cheat. For them, the end goal justify all means. And they have no problem killing their own people. You know what happened after the ceasefire came into force? Hamas, the first thing it did, went out to the streets and literally butchered hundreds of innocent Palestinians who were actively against Hamas. They were using the opportunity to kill them. Where's the international media on that?
Mm-hmm.
Where are all the NGOs? Like, honestly, whenever I hear an NGO endorses and supports, Gazans and Hamas, I'm basically appalled by it. Especially if you see NGOs that are endorsed by members of community, let's say the LGBTQ community, endorsing and supporting Hamas and Gaza, that they do not adhere to the same principles that these organizations do, yet they're getting their endorsement and support because of ignorance, anti-Semitism, who knows, who cares? But when you see a Palestinian, a Hamas terrorist, hiding in a private home of an individual, surrounding himself with innocent women and children, that's exactly what they do. They know exactly what makes you tick. They know you have a soft spot for the underdog. That's why they're perpetuating the poor status of the Palestinian people as poor refugees, that they have nothing in their life. They're doing it on purpose because once they will simply break that circle of lie and advance forward and become a strong nation, then they will lose this advantage against the Western world because you're suckers for the underdog and you will always endorse them. So that's exactly what they're doing, attracting fire, attracting the destruction and damage. And as I said, they always lie because whenever you had a misfire of Hamas's rocket falling within the Gaza Strip, killing Palestinians, they blamed Israel for everything. And the international media jumped all over it and said, look, Israel is to blame. That's because they're doing a poor job covering the story.
Are you...
So let me throw some in there. On our trip I just got back in September from Israel, we were able to ask candid questions of the Israeli government about the why behind what they're doing. And they explained to us about how they're trying to minimize casualties. And there's a policy I think you called knocking on the roof.
Exactly.
You want to explain what knocking on the roof is?
Absolutely. That's a good point, Scott. Thank you for that. As I said, the IDF is the most moral military in the world. Me, personally, I was sitting next to my peers from the military discussing various military actions. And the first thing we do, okay, what's the collateral damage? What munition can we use to minimize that? Mm-hmm. And you know how many military operations we scratched last minute? Even diverting missiles on the way to the target because suddenly we saw children next to the target many, many times. And what Councilmember Sapiki just mentioned now, about, the knock-on door, we basically undermine our own military objectives by warning civilian population before we are striking a site. And when we do that, we know that the target itself, our enemies, will know that we're going to strike. Literally, we basically send them leaflets. We even make, phone calls to the people, their inhabitants, telling you need to leave before this and that hour because we're going to strike an attack. So we're actually undermining our own objectives by allowing them to escape before taking down a target.
One of the questions that I get from time to time when we discuss the relationship between the United States of America and Israel is, if America, we're in debt. We owe ourselves a lot of money. And so the question then becomes can we continue a relationship of financial need? And I think there is maybe a misunderstanding of how that relationship works. I see it as a business partnership, that Israel wants to partner with the United States of America in a business relationship and have that be an equitable balance between trade coming this way, trade going that way, and then America supporting Israel on the global stage, using our strength to back Israel in their endeavors to protect themselves. Is that the way that you see the financial back and forth between these two countries?
So let's put things straight. First of all, without the bipartisan support of the United States to Israel, we would have been in deep, deep trouble. After October 7th, many countries who we thought are friends basically turned their back on us. Mm-hmm. They stopped supplying the goods that we needed to defend ourselves, except the United States. The United States kept its promise, and helped supplying those materials that we so needed. And I think that even though America, of course, is a big economical giant and Israel is a small country, Israel contributes to the United States on so many levels. The technology that we develop in Israel helps save Americans' lives all around the world. Israeli businesses and companies sees the American market as the most important market, so all the products that we develop are actually being manufactured, being endorsed and supported and sold here. Not to mention that there are so many R&D centers of American companies in Israel. There's an R&D center of Walmart, of Costco, and others. We don't have Walmart or Costco in Israel. That's the depressing part. You should bring them to Israel so we can all enjoy the benefit of shopping there. But no, sadly, all the tech is being developed there for the benefit of the American people. So it goes both ways.
Will you talk about Startup Nation in Israel and how that works?
Absolutely. So basically, Israel is the leading country in the world of developing startups and advancing new technologies. And it's kind of funny because when you do the research, you understand that the average citizen of the world is using at least 2 or 3 Israeli technologies on his day-to-day basis without even knowing it. So that's crazy.
Right.
That's crazy. That's our contribution to the world. And it's not about monetary or making money or whatnot. It's simply putting a positive mark to the world.
I've gotten so many people who are asking so many questions of the Consul General, and I'll just try to pick a few of them. Larry writes in and says, my question is, why do so many American Jewish people still support the Democrat Party? We saw something in New York that I don't know that we ever thought we would see, where Jewish Americans went out in droves and voted for Mamdani, who has previously supported policies that are directly antithetical to the survival of the state of Israel in terms of, from the river to the sea and these types of things. Why do you think that is? I mean, and what can we do to try to get the message out?
I am sorry that I have to disappoint, but thankfully, being a representative of the state of Israel, I cannot talk on behalf of the Jewish community living in the United States. Not to mention, it's not my place to relate to anything that is about local elections. With all due respect, it's none of my business. It's not my concern. I mustn't do that.
No, that's completely fair. What about is there an opportunity? And I think Scott was referencing this to me a little before you got here, Consul. But is there an opportunity to have some sort of economic relationship between the state of Tennessee and the state of Israel?
Oh, absolutely. That's exactly why I'm here. I took a couple of days of my busy schedule, bringing my team with me in order to facilitate and find ways that how we can increase the collaborations between the state of Tennessee and the state of Israel. So I'm proud to say that in the making, there are at least 2 major businesses who are going to open shop here in Tennessee in the upcoming months. And there are also the great potential of increasing collaboration on the academic sphere, which will eventually bring more businesses, because basically everything is intertwined. Once you bring more academic collaborations, you bring more student exchange, you bring more businesses, more interest. That's exactly what we're planning to do.
So a couple of things we're working on as the caucus is Ag Launch in West Tennessee. It's an agricultural conglomerate that has leased a bunch of farmland. They're getting them to partner with BARD, the Bilateral Agricultural Research Division in Israel, to take the technological advancements they have in agriculture and get them on the ground here in Tennessee and start to develop new techniques in agriculture to get better yields, better crop resistance, et cetera. Something else we're working on also is with Startup Nation to get more access to that investment for our startups here in Tennessee to create a better relationship between them. We're working with Elon Musk and a company in Israel that has created a way to electrify the road so that when they build the new tunnel with the airport, those Teslas will run underground. But while they're running underground, they will have a mechanism that self-charges them as they drive down the road in perpetuity. It'll just charge itself forever.
Wow.
And then we're also working on other things with academia. We're working with the University of Tennessee and the educational fields in Israel to allow master's and doctorate levels to go over to Israel and study over there abroad and get their doctorates and master's degrees over there, and opening the doors for more Israeli students to come here and learn from our institutions. And then in K-12, try to bring about more of an awareness of what happened in World War II during the Holocaust. Getting maybe some kind of virtual presentation from Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Remembrance Museum, and let our kids start to see what happened back then in real time with actual artifacts and discussing those hard things that when you hear the word genocide and you see what it meant in 1930s and 40s Europe, then our kids start to understand when they hear genocide what that precisely means. And what that doesn't mean is what Israel was accused of in Gaza.
Well, right, and does it frustrate you? I mean, you're based here. I mean, obviously you have communication and connection, and I don't know how often you get back to Israel, but when you see the United States press regurgitate some of the language about quote unquote genocide, considering what the Israeli people went through, what the Jewish people went through. Does that ever frustrate you that language is being used when you did not start this war? The Hamas people did.
Again, it represents what I said earlier, that since we and our adversary do not exist on the same plane of values, this is a fine example of how the enemy is twisting the truth and basically using our own history, our own past, in order to create this false narrative and lie that international media likes to embrace for whatever reason, thinkable, but that's, at the end of the day, is a lie. When the Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas basically promoted a resolution at UNESCO, at the United Nations, claiming that Judaism has nothing to do with Jerusalem and claiming that Jesus Christ was a Palestinian, you see, that's what they do. They basically falsify reality. They change the narrative in order to entrap people who are not that knowledgeable of history and what's happening in the region, and that's a problem.
So in a perfect world, the state of Israel would be secure, would be free of these types of horrific attacks against them. Do you have an issue with a free Palestine, if you will, or a free area where those people can live in peace so long as they are not?
Let me tell you something. Palestine should be free. Definitely they should be free from their tyrannical leaders because historically speaking, the Palestinian people are victims. They're victims of their own leadership. Yasser Arafat, the first leader of the Palestinian Authority, the first leader of Palestine, basically the West Bank, he stole $1.4 billion of the financial aid the Palestinian people got. Where does his wife and daughter live? You know that? They live in France. They enjoy that money. He's dead. The Palestinian people are poor, miserable because of their leaders. Of course, there's a room for everyone. And don't forget that Israel did accept the original partition plan by the United Nations in 1947. A special committee decided that the land itself should be divided into two countries, one for Israel, the Jewish nation, one for Palestinians. We said yes. When the first thing happened, we were attacked by 6 Arab countries who didn't want to take the land and give it to the Palestinians. No, they kept it for themselves.
Well, and Israel, in my rudimentary understanding of the past, is that it was, 2006 that Israel pulled itself out of Gaza, allowed for free elections, and unfortunately, Hamas won those election processes, and that kind of led it. I mean, Israel was ready to allow the Palestinians to govern themselves in that region of the country, and that's what went down in 2006, right?
You go even before that, 1994, the Oslo Accords, the first time that Israel recognized the Palestinians' right for their own piece of land. We signed an agreement basically giving the Palestinians a certain level of autonomy until they would prove themselves worthy enough to be completely autonomous, because until then, they were committing atrocities, murdering innocent in Israeli women and children. Even to this day, the Palestinian Authority is paying, we call it pay for slay. They're paying money to encourage Palestinians to go out and murder innocent Israelis. So and it's atrocious. There's like a table where you see that if you lose an arm or a leg as a Palestinian terrorist, you're getting more money. And if you're dead, your family will get the money. They're encouraging them to kill. So yes, in the past we gave him the opportunity, and in 2005, 2005, we disengaged from the Gaza Strip. Prime Minister Ariel Sharon at the time, he was a hawkish individual, and he was asked, why are you doing this? He said, because we need to give them a chance. We did what we could. We disengaged from the Gaza Strip, went back to the 1967 international border as it was recognized by the UN. We gave them everything back. We tore down settlements. We tore down houses of Israelis living there, brought them back into Israel. We left infrastructure worth millions of dollars for their economy so they can build an economy. Now, the first thing the Hamas did, tore down everything, destroyed everything again, because, as I said, they know exactly what makes you tick. You love the underdog. They wanted to perpetuate the poor status of the Palestinian people living.
And just to clarify, when you withdrew from Gaza, you also dug up your dead.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Brought them,
right.
Dug up all the cemeteries. This one thing, and being over there in September, we were able to tour the Mediterranean side of Israel. And when you see Ashkelon, when you see Jaffa, when you see Tel Aviv, that's what Gaza could be and was supposed to be. And sitting there on the Mediterranean, probably some of the most expensive real estate in the world, of what the opportunity the Palestinians had. But because of the election they had, all that money was stolen from investment. to what Gaza could be a jewel of the Mediterranean of foreign investment and freedom, we have to figure out a way to get Hamas out of Gaza so that people can self-govern themselves in a way to provide peace to the region.
What is your hope for that region moving down the road in the final minute or two that we have? And what is your hope, Consul General, for the relationship between Israel and the United States, specifically the Southeast and in Tennessee?
So first of all, the relationship between Israel and the United States is extremely important for both of us. Because at the end of the day, a strong Israel means a strong America, and a strong America means a strong Israel. And we need the strong bipartisan support of the United States for the survivability and for the flourishment and success of Israel as the only democratic bastion in the Middle East. In regards of the Palestinians, I hope that the Palestinians will be brave enough to raise a new generations of leadership that will be willing to take the necessary steps and willing to extend their hand in peace and shake our hand, because our hand was always extended in peace to our neighbors, and they were the only ones refusing, to have peace with us. And we had so many opportunities in the past. People forget that. We had so many opportunities, and they always said no.
It's been an incredible hour. Scott, thank you for bringing on the Consul General. Consul, thank you for stopping by. Thank you for being in Nashville. And enjoy yourself. Have a great time here. We appreciate the time that you've spent on the radio show with us.
Thank you very much.
We'll be back in just a moment. A couple of hours to go. It's the Matt Murphy Show on Super Talk.